Hi, Julian here. Probably no one can claim that he likes to create technical documentation. The interesting activities and tasks are done, and it is a necessary evil to create the documentation. But technical documentation is extremely important as it represents the hard-earned results. In ROHR2 there is an entry Documentation in the menu bar. All commands for selection of templates, creation and editing of documentation are available here. To create a documentation, first a template is selected according to the documentation type. The templates are divided by program, by documentation type and by language. The templates provided by Sigma are located in the ROHR2 installation directory in the subfolder R2 user. This directory is displayed when a template, no matter if report, appendix or output, is selected via the graphical user interface. In this case, a calculation report for ROHR2 in English language shall be generated. As soon as the template is selected, it is copied into the folder R2 doc in the project directory and saved under the name of the project. A $character sign indicates that it is a template of the project. To create a document from the template, the Create Document command is selected from the documentation menu bar. Superficially, the report seems to be complete, but already at the cover page it is obvious that some important information is missing. The generated documentation is saved under the same name without the preceding $sign. In order to understand what the difference is between a template and the documentation actually generated, one should look at the structure of a template. Basically, a template consists of static and dynamic content. Static content can be fixed text blocks, tables or images that do not change over the course of a project. For example, the address of the client or the own company logo, but probably also the basic structure of the report. Dynamic content can also be text blocks, tables or images. However, these can change during the project. For example, plots of the pipe routing, dimensions or friction values of supports. The dynamic content is only included in the form of a placeholder variable. You can recognize them by the prefix hashtag. Only when the actual documentation is created, the placeholders are replaced by the actual content. It is time to customize our report template. Before making any change in the project-specific template, all necessary adjustments should have been made in the user template. For example, the address and logo of your company will be the same for each job. The changes in the user template will then be applied to the project-specific template when the modified user template is selected again. It is important to know that the already existing template will be overwritten. Of course, this step is not necessary once the user template has been completely created. If you want to change the default path for the user templates, for example because your company saves and updates the templates at a common network path, this can be done via the settings in ROHR2. Now, project-specific changes can be made in the project template. Entering the address of the customer, inserting page breaks at desired places or changing the size of headlines. If you do not open the template via the file manager but via the menu item Edit Report Template, a dialog window opens which presents the available placeholders in a tree structure. Leading symbols indicate the type of placeholder, text, table or graphic. A preview can be opened by clicking the Preview button. When an element is selected by a click, the placeholder link can be copied to the clipboard via the Copy button. For this I add the chapter substructure, which should contain the overview table of the stress analysis for substructures. Tables can be further customized. Font adjustments can be made, certain columns can be hidden or shown, and the headings in the header can be modified. These changes can also be applied as global and not project-specific changes. The appendix adds additional information to the report. Mostly these are extensive plots which visualize the results of the calculation. However, it can also contain the contents of the output files. The procedure for editing the appendix is identical to that of the report. An appendix template is selected and edited, if necessary, before it is generated. A template for the output files is relatively simple in design, as it essentially consists only of a header and a footer. The file format can be RTF or PDF, unlike reports and appendices, and accordingly 2 templates can be chosen. The procedure of editing the template for output differs, depending on the type of output file. The content of the respective output file is controlled via the load case menu. You can distinguish between the output for individual load cases, spring design, stress analysis, extreme values and more. The output of the individual load cases includes in the standard setting also the listing of all input data. Which input data is printed can be defined by predefined filters or manually. The same applies to the results display. Here it is also possible to switch between a compressed view and the local or global coordinate system. For the output of the stress analysis, the documentation can be limited to the nodes that have a stress utilization greater than a manually defined value. Each output file is preceded by a comment area. This contains the project information, the task description and individual comment. If you want to change the language of the documentation, please note that you have to distinguish between static and dynamic content. The language of the placeholders can be changed via the project settings. In addition, the selected template must be adapted because the content that is not inserted by a placeholder of course remains unchanged by ROHR2. The language of the interface is independent from the language of the documentation. And that's been it. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one.